Hi everyone, in today's video I'm going to talk about the latest Azure updates in March 2026. It's a new type of series on my YouTube channel, so please let me know in the comments if you're interested in, and I will try to continue to do it every single month. So let's get started. Okay, so let's start with everything related to AI and agents. If I think about what's changing, it's that agents are becoming a managed thing, not a do-it-yourself project. So as you can see, Foundry Agent Service is now GA, so I've got a much better starting point for identity, for logging and monitoring. We also have Azure SRE Agent in GA, and this one is about operations. It supports source code grounding, it can work with multiple model options including OpenAI and cloud models, it can run Python execution, it has extended memory, and I can tune how autonomous it is. And there is an AI agent for container networking troubleshooting in public preview. That's interesting. So I can walk through troubleshooting using natural language prompts against live cluster telemetry. It's read-only and it gives me structured remediation steps. Now, if agents are becoming normal, the next thing I think is where do I actually use them? And it's clearly inside database tooling. GitHub Copilot in SSMS Server Management Studio 22 is GA. The big deal is natural language to T-SQL plus code completions. Now I also get database-specific guidance and I can apply custom business rules using database instructions, so I can steer it toward my team's pattern. SQL MCP Server is in preview. I think of this as a more controlled bridge from an AI tool to a production database, using an MCP connector through Data API Builder. So I'm not wiring an AI tool straight to the database and hoping for the best, and it can run locally or containerized. Data API Builder with Copilot in the MS SQL VS Code extension is also in preview. I pick tables, I define CRUD and authentication, and it generates REST, GraphQL and MCP endpoints from the schema. Database DevOps in SSMS is GA. It's schema as code with SQL project, source control, reliable deployments and CI/CD integration. Also in preview, we have Query Profiler and Copilot in Schema Designer inside the MS SQL VS Code extension. And we also have Azure DevOps March 2026 updates landing as well. Switching to AKS, this month has a lot of networking and upgrade work, and it's mostly about reducing risk and reducing complexity. So we have blue-green agent pool upgrade in preview. So instead of upgrading the node pool in one place, I bring up a parallel node pool, I validate, then I shift workloads, and if it's bad, I have got a clean rollback path. Application routing with meshless Istio is in preview. The key point is gateway API routing without sidecars, so I can get modern ingress patterns without pushing a full mesh into every pod, and there is an ingress to gateway migration tool to help move over. Cross-cluster networking in Fleet Manager is in preview as well. It's built around a managed Cilium cluster mesh pattern, a global service registry and eBPF-based routing, so multiple AKS clusters can talk in a more controlled way. AKS managed GPU metrics in Azure Monitor is preview, so I can finally see GPU behavior without building my own scrape pipeline. A few more GA items, container network metrics filtering on container network logs are GA, Azure Container Storage v2.1 is GA with Elastic SAN integration. Azure Red Hat OpenShift now supports managed identity and workload identity. I think it's a big one. And Azure Kubernetes Application Network is also in preview, and it's easy to misunderstand this. Basically, it gives me MTLS, app-aware authentication policies, traffic telemetry, and even multi-region connectivity. But it's not a full service mesh, it's more like an app-first policy-driven networking without the full overhead. Now let's look at data services, because there is a mix of security migration and get data into analytics improvements. On Azure SQL, transparent data encryption has TDE versionless key support and it's GA. That's a key management improvement. It removes some friction when I'm handling encryption keys over time. Also for Azure SQL Managed Instance, change event streaming is in preview. The important bit is near real-time change event streams, so downstream systems can react without me building a custom CDC pipeline first. On Postgres, the migration story is getting stronger. The Postgres SQL migration service now supports Google AlloyDB and EDB workloads, and that's GA, so more sources can move into Azure Database for Postgres SQL with supported tooling. And online migration is more reliable now because it uses the native PostgreSQL PG output replication plugin, and that's also GA. And for provisioning and operations, PostgreSQL Elastic clusters now have Terraform, Bicep and Ansible support in GA, so it fits how most of us automate deployments. Monitoring is improved as well. Azure Database for Postgres Grafana dashboards are GA. And security on storage underneath is moving too. Customer managed encryption keys on premium SSD v2 for PostgreSQL is in preview. So a lot of changes around this service. On the analytics side, Cosmos DB mirroring in Fabric with private endpoints is GA, so I can mirror transactional data into Fabric while keeping the connectivity private, so that's awesome. And Fabric mirroring for Azure Database for MySQL is in preview, so MySQL joins that same pattern. And finally, Azure Databricks Lakebase is GA, giving a more unified shape for warehousing and AI workloads. Now for the supporting infrastructure, a few of these are very practical quality of life change. Draft and deploy on Azure Firewall is GA. The way it works is I clone my policy into a draft, I make the changes without touching the live policy, then I deploy once. That matters because before, at the time of recording, each rule change could take 2 to 4 minutes, and that's painful when I'm doing multiple edits. Web Application Firewall default rule set 2.2 is GA, so keep an eye on that if you depend on managed WAF behavior. EventGrid has a bunch of updates in preview that are mostly about security and integration, things like cross-tenant webhook delivery, network security perimeter support, MQTT, OAuth 2.0, authentication, custom webhook authentication, and assign clients IDs. For storage access, Entra ID based SFTP for Azure Blob Storage is in preview. This is big because it means SSO, MFA, conditional access, role-based access control, and user lifecycle management, so I don't have to manage local users or share keys just to do SFTP. User delegation SaaS is GA for Azure Tables, Files, and Queues, so I can use Entra ID backed shared access signatures there as well. So a lot of interesting things around blob storage. For observability, OTLP ingestion in Azure Monitor is in preview. I can send OpenTelemetry directly. Metrics can go to Monitor workspaces with PromQL, and logs and traces go to Log Analytics. More previews. Azure Storage Mover can do private transfers from AWS S3 VPC to Azure Blob, and ephemeral OS disk with full caching is now in preview for VM and VM scale sets. And 2 more GA items. Prometheus alerts for Arc-enabled Kubernetes are GA, and there is a new Azure Cloud region in Denmark. Now the retirements, and I like to think about these by dates, so I can decide what I need to do now versus what I just track. Coming soon in 2026, external data import and data connections in Azure Machine Learning retire on September 2026. If I still have dependencies on those, I need to schedule the replacement work now. Next year, in 2027, Azure Batch Windows Server 2016 images retire on January 2027. That same date is also the deadline for the low priority to spot VMs migration in Azure Batch and NV v3 and NV v4 VM series end of life. So I'm doing GPU batch work. I really need a plan. Also in 2027 for HPC users, HC series, HBV2 and NP series VMs retire on 2027 in May. Those are not things I want to be surprised by because cluster sizing and testing takes time. And now the long runaway 2029 and later, but this can still be big. Azure Cosmos DB for PostgreSQL retires on 2029 in March. And the migration path is to Azure Database for PostgreSQL or to Azure Cosmos DB NoSQL APIs, depending on what I actually need. Also, in March 2029, manually registered Azure VPN clients for Gov and 21 ViaNet retire, so those environments need a transition plan. Azure VMware Solution AV36P and AV52 nodes retire on June 2029, so tracked node type dependencies. And Azure Sphere retires on July 31, which is far out, but for IoT life cycles, that's still something to plan for. And then a few cleanup retirements to note. Emissions impact dashboard for Azure is being retired. Flatcar container Linux for AKS is being retired from preview. The sidecar for Prometheus remote write is being retired, so use built-in remote write. Azure SQL Elastic Query shard map manager mode is being retired, and the Azure policy login logout workaround is being retired. So March 2026 really feels like an agent and tooling month. When I see Foundry Agent Service and Azure SRE Agent going GA, that's a signal to me that agents are becoming a managed runtime, not a side project. And at the same time, Copilot is moving right into SSMS and the MS SQL VS Code extension with the SQL MCP server as a safer connection pattern. On the platform side, AKS networking and upgrades got a big refresh, and the retirements list is worth a quick scan, especially Cosmos DB for PostgreSQL, HPC VM series, and Azure Batch changes. So that's it. I hope it was insightful. Let me know in the comments, like the video, and I see you on the next one.